Good afternoon, everybody. We've got new very loud mics today, so we'll try not to shout. I have to make everyone aware that this meeting is being recorded, so if you're uncomfortable with that fact, please make yourself known, and we can escort you from the room or whatever. As you all know, the leader's wife passed away earlier this week, hence why I'm in the chair today. After discussion with Cabinet this morning, I think it would be appropriate just to have a moment's silence just to pay respects to Sue and of course Malcolm as well for his sad loss. So if you're all happy, we'll just take 30 seconds just to remember Sue. Thank you. Impeccable as ever. Right, on to the business. Item 1 is apologies. I have Malcolm Page, obviously, Cecilia Motley and David Minery. No, everybody else is here, no other apologies? Okay. Item 2, disclosable pecuniary interests. As always, you should have taken advice before the meeting. Item 3 is minutes of the last meeting. They have been circulated.
Proposed to accept.
Proposed. Second to that. Thank you, Michael. Let's move on. All in favour? Thank you. Item 4 is public questions. I believe we have 3, sorry. I've got 4 at the top of my page. The first question, Mr. Richard Green.
Well, the question's been written and a very long answer has been given. So if everybody's read all of those things, take it as read.
Okay.
Thank you for the answer.
Thank you. The second question is from Dr. Nick Richards.
Yes, the same applies. The question has been answered. I was asked if...
Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do.
Please come to the table. Just press the one button until it goes red.
Right hand side.
This one?
Yeah.
That's it.
The supplementary question, what will be the effect on the revenue and also participation, as well as the cost on public health, of a pool that is not accessible to 68% of the population who walk or cycle to the current facility, also to the disabled groups, the children and the elderly without the use of a car, and anyone working in the town centre?
Thank you, Dr. Richards. I'll pass over to Stuart or George.
Thank you for the supplementary question. The 13th of July Cabinet report references all of those points that you raised, and in terms of the evaluation that was taken at that time, factor that in to the overall scoring matrix that was undertaken. Both the 13th of July report and this subsequent report recognises that clearly, whilst Shropshire Council has a preferred location, there is still an opportunity for interested organisations to come forward with business cases to demonstrate to keep the pool at the quarry or a town centre location. So I think it would be premature for Shropshire Council to do any further work on accessibility to any site until that has run its course, which obviously is detailed in today's Cabinet paper.
Thank you, George. Certainly, speaking on behalf of the Quarry Swimming and Fitness Forum, I think that we will come forward with an expression of interest.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. The question 3 is from Mr. Granger Jones. Yes, sir.
Thank you, James.
Thank you very much, Chairman, for inviting me to ask my question. I was here actually for the 13th of July meeting, and it strikes me that the language of the report and the Cabinet conclusions for that discussion appear to allow for a degree of flexibility as to options, in addition to granting a period of 1 year's grace so that all parties concerned could consider credible alternatives. However, in the paper being given to you today, the language seems to have changed to a harder
Mr.
line.
Scully, we've got the
You've got it,
that
yeah.
question has been tabled and answered. Do you have
Okay.
a supplementary?
Yes, I do, Chairman, yes, I do. It's on the same tack, really, because it's my impression, having been both a chief officer and a cabinet member in two different authorities, I can see both sides of the argument. I think it's a very well argued report, but it seems to me that it does actually load the dice even more against the quarry pool. And I'd like to ask in that respect, Chairman, why it is that the members who are here, who are also members of Shrewsbury Town Council, are not allowed, will have been advised not to take part in the ongoing debate at Shropshire Council regarding the future swimming pool provision in Shrewsbury, because their participation will seriously risk the credibility and validity of decisions which are taken. Now, I thoroughly disagree with that, because you're not at the stage where decisions should or are being taken yet. There's no finances involved as yet. So it seems to me both wrong legally and premature democratically. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you for the supplementary. I think that's a legally based question, so
I'm sorry.
I'll pass on to the...
It is.
Thank you for that. You're perfectly entitled to your opinion. I have given that advice to members. They've received that, and it's now a matter for them to decide whether they wish to take part if they do have a conflict because they are dual-hatted members, i.e. they sit on the town council. That is perfectly their entitlement to make their decision, but I'm very clear with that advice. I don't believe it's incorrect, and that's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the official line, so we'll take it at that.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you.
Right. Item 5 is scrutiny items. We're not aware of any that are on the agenda. It brings us nicely linked to item 6, which is the swim facilities for Shrewsbury. Stuart.
Before you start, can I just make the comment that clearly we've been given the monitoring officer's advice, and it is down to the individuals and how they deal with that. I'm a dual twin hatter like the other others in the room, and I think my opinion is that I will take that advice, and I'm going to leave the room and not partake in this debate.
Thank you, Mal. That's
I'd just like to add to that, if there are already twin-hatted members who want further explanation, then you are welcome to take advice on a one-to-one basis with the monitoring officer should you need any clarification or to understand further why that advice is being given. But I am confident that the advice is accurate and it should be followed.
I think I accept the advice in the round, as it were. However, there are a couple of questions that I did want to ask that would be considered neutral in terms of the overall. That questions related to clarification of points which are made in the report, which are neutral in terms of any benefit that might come from my involvement in the debate.
okay. I don't want to get into the legalities of this during the meeting. It had quite a long period of time since Claire's advice came out a week ago. I'm willing to send Claire out the meeting for a minute to give you a one-to-one advice if you wish, Alan.
Okay.
Do you want to take that up?
Yes, please.
Okay. Just have an interlude while we get the legal advice.
In the circumstances, Chair, I will be leaving the room just to say that we shall have other opportunities to make the comments that we wish to make, but we will, I personally will be seeking clarification on a whole series of issues within this report.
That's absolutely fine. Will you be coming back?
I don't know.
Can I ask that any points that Alan raises are circulated so that we all are cited on them?
Yeah, I think we can get that. Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. Because of the maybe conflict, which we'll sort out later, with your agreement, I'll sit in for this item, and then afterwards, because I've got other appointments at a local school, Hannah Fraser will sit in for me, if that's agreeable to you.
That's absolutely fine, Roger, no problem. Stuart, over to you. Can you switch your mic up, Roger, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colleagues, you have in front of you the paper on the future swimming provision in Shrewsbury, which is a natural progression from the meeting that we had on the 13th of July, the Cabinet meeting on the 13th of July, and the corresponding paper. This paper basically clarifies the position of Shropshire Council. It also sets out the terms of reference for any alternative business case to be put forward by another organisation. It sets out the timeline which would be expected to be adhered to on that, and I think it now gives clarity, absolute clarity, as to what is expected from Shropshire Council to meet the forward planning for a swimming provision in Shrewsbury. There has been many questions on this paper which have been answered. Also, I answered questions on radio only last week. So I think the paper is quite transparent. It's extremely transparent. It sets out the agenda for an alternative bid, and I submit it for approval.
Stuart, any speakers? Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. I was looking for some notes I've made for this and can't find them at present. Disappointed in this paper. Disagree with it wholeheartedly. I don't think it's taking into consideration at all what the people of Shrewsbury have said. The people of Shrewsbury said quite definitely that they wanted the swimming pool in the town centre. And for the council to disregard this is really disregarding local opinion, disregarding the consultation that Shropshire Council had. I also, as I referred to council and council last week, I've been told, and unless I'm given evidence to the contrary, that over 500 of the responses that were made to the consultation were discounted because they were made from a computer that had already been made once. And I asked the cabinet member that question, which he's undertaken to find out, but that the people who know far more than I do have said they've looked at the computers and found it, and they can identify different computers where responses have been discounted. But to come to this paper, I think it is flawed. There are a number of items in it that I disagree with. There is an election next May, where this whole thing will, if I had my way, and the ones in my group, be thrown out, and we would want to work in partnership with the communities around Shrewsbury to run a swimming pool. This council is saying elsewhere that it wants to do partnership with town and parish councils throughout Shropshire. But for the swimming pool, this paper says that we're going to go it alone. You've got to put a full business case in, and if you're involved in this business case, then you can't get involved with Shropshire Council. There is an election next May, and I think it is deeply flawed for that reason. What you are saying is that some councillors will be able to campaign and ask questions, and other councillors will not. I disagree with it. If one looks at the business case even, and looks at the references there about how the marking is going to be done, in 4, which is 20% of the criteria which needs of the you have to satisfy, I think again that it is flawed. It says, does the business case provide additional social, environmental and economic benefits and impact? What is meant by the word additional? The question was asked last July and has been asked ever since about the economic effect that having a swimming pool in the town has now, and the disbenefit it will have if the swimming pool is moved out of it. So to use the word additional, I think presupposes and prejudges what can happen. If it said, does the business case provide social, environmental, economic benefits, full stop, and take out and impact, it is more fair. I think it is biased because of that statement, in that there is a prejudgment, and whoever is doing the judgment for this will have to take that into effect and use the word additional. So any argument about the economic benefit in Shrewsbury, I'm not sure whether it can be adjusted or not. There's also the predicted throughput in 2. I can put a finger in the air and I can guess anything at all about it. Some of the information that was put forward in July about the predicted throughput in the Sundawn option, I've never been able to understand. It assumes quite a lot in it. There are other items in this paper which I could really spend time discussing with you, but it's your cabinet. You'll be reaching a decision on it. I'm just marking the table to say that my group, councillors that I know, will be voting against it. On the information they have at present, we want to work in partnership with the communities, not against them. We would want to take note of any consultation that is done, not totally ignore it, which is what this paper does. Thank you, Chairman.
I think your points are noted, Roger. I mean, my understanding of it is that Sundawn is the preferred option for the purpose of the evaluation, to allow the bid and the town council and whoever else, including the Quarry Forum, to put their bids forward, so we're comparing apples with apples. If we put all 6 or 7 of the options in there and muddied the waters even more, we'd never get to a clear conclusion at the end of this. But I think this opens the door for the Quarry Forum group, the town council and the bid to come in with something substantial and a well-rounded document which we can evaluate one against the other. I think that's the whole purpose of it. Stuart, you wanted to come in?
No, I would just, well, you've answered the question that I was going to say. I think we have listened to the people of Shrewsbury, and we do understand and are quite minded to accept the fact that the quarry is the preferred location for a lot of people in Shrewsbury. And the fact that we've actually extended a period of time to put an alternative bid in to keep the swimming pool at the quarry, it's there. I think it's very transparent. It was the right thing to do under the circumstances. We have 12 months, as and from today, basically, to come up with an alternative bid, which, as far as I'm concerned, if I'm still portfolio holder at that time, will be taken very, very seriously indeed. And if there is a way of keeping it at the quarry, which is beneficial and meets all the criteria that Shropshire Council have put there as the term and the terms of reference, then why would we not look at it? Thank you.
Exactly, why would you not?
Roger, you first.
Well, thank you, Jim. There is one point. I noticed on page 12, it lists local members. I live just outside Shrewsbury, so I'm not on the town council, but I noticed that Councillor Ted Clark is listed there, and I'm not sure why. Does that mean that Councillor Clark cannot participate or not? He represents Bayston Hill, not the town council, but it is listed there. But I maintain the case that it is flawed. It is being finance driven totally, in total disregard to what the community wants and needs and has expressed their wish.
Because you made that point. I don't know the answer to the Ted Clark. Moves on. Lee.
Thank you. I wanted to second the paper.
Good.
I support the paper, and I think that you put it very well yourself. Like the question that we had from Mr. Granger-Jones, I was, I have to say, surprised that we were facing the same paper before us again today. because I didn't understand what the rationale behind that was. But I think you explained that very clearly, and that is that if we're going to have a robust case on which the option for other proposals to come forward, then we need to be absolutely clear. There needs to be a level playing field, and we need to declare what our preferred option is, and that is the purpose of today. So I'm very happy to support the paper. I hear Roger's point around the issue of Shrewsbury members and questions that they might want to submit. I'm happy for yourself or for colleagues who are in that situation. If you'd like me to table questions on their behalf, I'm very happy to support that. So we can have a conversation outside the room of that. I'm very happy to help in any way that I can. And if there's a particular issue that they want brought out, then let someone else facilitate that by asking the question, because we need to make the best of these 12 months. It is a genuine offer to make the availability of all of those other alternatives to come forward and for them to be properly measured against the criteria we've set out, and I absolutely support that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. I think we'd all support that. And of course, the portfolio holder in Georgia, his doors are always open for those conversations as well. So those questions could be asked at any time. They don't have to be in this forum. Do you want to come?
Yeah, if I can, Chairman. I will be having a conversation with the legal officers, etc., because as far as I'm concerned, today, Cabinet at this moment in time have not made a decision on what they're going to do. But obviously the dual-hatted members have been advised that they cannot talk at this meeting. But the Cabinet have not yet decided what they're going to do. I'm not sure. There might be an amendment come forward and say whatever you wish. It may well be challenged and the decision may well be called in, and it can't be implemented until next week. Once a decision is made, okay, there may be a case there, but at the moment I'm just, for the record, stating that I do not understand why when a decision is being made like this, the advice is there, but the advice is there.
Thank you, Roger. The recommendations are laid out on page 2 there. It's been proposed and seconded. Are we all happy to proceed?
Yeah.
Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Right. Item 7 is the financial strategy. Over to Michael.
Thank you, Chairman. Follows the usual format that members will have seen before, and sets out the financial position for 2017 and 2018 and beyond, as set out in the summary on the first page, paragraph 1. In paragraph 2, we see the approach is to manage the considerable uncertainty in local government finance, which does not necessarily just affect us, and by ensuring we understand long-term consequences of decisions we take at our local level in the short term. The uncertainty in finances showed no sign of resolution, short or medium. In paragraph 3, we also then see that in the meantime we will continue to review every available option to deliver a balanced budget in the short term, taking into account of the implication of those short-term decisions over the medium term. In paragraph 4, Chairman, I just wish to draw attention to 3 words, and that is the balancing of the books. Before moving on to the recommendations, which I shall be supporting, obviously, and moving, I'd just like to draw members' attention to page 10 of the report, 5.7, and chart 1. It's the old adage that one little picture speaks 1,000 words. Draw your attention also, members, to the appendix 3, which I commend to you for inwardly digesting. Chairman, I move recommendations as set out in 2, paragraphs A, B and C.
Thank you, Michael. I'm happy to move that from the chair. Do we have anyone wants to comment on this paper? Everyone's hand's going up. Alan, you first.
Clearly, if this was a legitimate means of avoiding the devastating cuts that have been proposed and are still there as red items, then everybody would be pleased. In actual fact, that is not the case, because it is pointed out at the end of these one-off spendings and various manipulation, the shortfall will be pretty much the same as it is now, and hence a massive difficulty in a few years to come. The thing that this is designed to do, as much as anything else, apart from avoiding immediate cuts, is to put off the bad news beyond the May elections and to resolve those issues that have been arising throughout the county about the enormous impact of the cuts that austerity and your actions are leading to. So it's a good political move, but whether it's good for the long-term finances and the long-term future of our services is very debatable. There's a matter arising from this, obviously, in that for the last 18 months or so we've been talking about crisis in certain services and the potential to either close them or to transfer them over, and various town and parish councils have been very collaborative in their endeavours to resolve those issues, particularly to take on local services that are threatened by cuts. I just wonder whether or not this means that timetable, that programme of transfer and discussion is delayed, or whether the localism aspect of that transformation policy is still apparent. And I think it would be useful to many people if that issue was clarified.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Mike, you...
Anyone else?
Lee.
Thank you. I had hoped that Alan would take the opportunity of welcoming the paper and the decision that inevitably follows, and that is that the 102,000 to Ludlow Foyer funding will not take place. So I'll take the opportunity to welcome this paper on the basis of that, and also on the basis of a large number of voluntary organisations and housing support organisations that, as a result of the adjustment to our finances and the way that we're forward casting our medium-term financial plan, will enable us both to continue to work with those organisations towards a sustainable footing. Particularly encouraging from my perspective with adult social care, because it's been clear to me, and I'm pleased that my colleague Hannah across the way chaired the Performance Management Scrutiny Task and Finish Group, and it was their view, and they shared my view, that any proposals to curtail funding to the community voluntary sector and housing support would have a very significant impact on our ability to deliver adult social care and the type of preventative support that we've been championing in our communities. So I am very encouraged by the approach, albeit this isn't a long-term fix, but I think it's the right way forward, and I absolutely welcome the decision. Thank you.
Hannah?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. First, about the final local government finance settlement in 3.3. There's comment that it would appear to be prudent to accept an offer of a settlement through to 2020. We have to remind ourselves that the last government settlement was disastrous, and the reason that we're now having to scrabble around to find money all over the place and down the back of the sofa and behind the fridge and all sorts of things. So on the one hand, it seems madness to actually continue to accept such a shortfall and such a bad settlement, but clearly it would give the council some certainty. So could we have some idea as to when and how council will decide whether or not we're going to approve that accept the government's offer until 2020? I did also just want some clarification on 7.4, which suggests that the majority of red-weighted proposals will not have to be delivered for the 17-18 financial year, but what does majority mean exactly? Which of those red-rated proposals will we actually have to bring forward earlier than that? The other final question, I think probably for James, is some while back now the Veolia smoothing balance was put into reserves and has been largely spent on redundancies. I think it was about 19 million and there's now 3.395 left, and this is in table 3. How confident are we that the necessary level of capital receipts can be achieved to continue to fund the redundancy reserve? And also, how much now in revenue is financing the original Veolia smoothing sort of interest? How much is that costing us? Thank you.
I'll pass over to the Chief Executive and James to come in on that.
Yeah, to answer the first part of the question, agreeing to the government's offer on certainty on financial settlement, that was approved at Council in July, so it's a previous paper that's been brought to Council and it's approved. And in terms of why would the Council do that, it is because we get certainty on funding going forward. Elected members will remember that earlier this year we had Greg Clark, who was the then Minister for Communities and Local Government, visiting us in Shropshire, and he was clear at that time, and government are clear outside of Greg Clark's own commitment, that for authorities that don't agree to funding as offered now going forward, they're likely to see a decrease in funding, not an increase. So if we don't agree to the funding on the table now, what we will see is a decrease in that offer, not an increase going forward. So it's pretty straightforward that the obvious decision to make is to agree to the greater amount, which is what's on offer now, and create certainty so that we can plan our budgets as we have done into the future.
Just in addition to that, I'd add that the majority of authorities around the country appear to be accepting the offer, and obviously there is an implication for those that don't accept the offer in terms of this is the minimum that would be provided, and so therefore in accepting it, it's suggesting that it could in theory be better, but if you don't accept it, in theory it could be worse. And within that offer there are only certain grants which are applicable anyway, so it's not just a case of accepting the whole position, it's just the specific grants that are laid out within that. In terms of the Veolia smoothing reserve, I don't have the figure for the waste budget to hand, but I can find that out quite quickly. What I can say is that the 19 million that was taken out of the smoothing reserve was replaced by effectively a £2 million growth within the revenue budget. So it's around £2 million that went into the revenue budget, which basically meant that the service was funded over the period of the remaining PFI, but not only that, but at the end of the PFI, when the costs would change, there was more in the base budget to help manage that transition at the end of the process. I know that's quite a long way into the future, but in terms of the approach, it actually ticked a number of boxes in terms of the correct way to deal with it.
Thank you, James. Now you want to come in.
If I may, Steve. Firstly, to concur with the comments that have been made by Lee, but I just want to come back to Alan and just challenge Alan slightly when he says this is all about the elections. Well, I sit here and I'm not standing in May, so it's definitely not about elections for me. It is about a process that makes the budget work for the next few years and gives us an opportunity, not just as a council, but the political parties and also the recognised national bodies, to challenge the government to make sure that we get that fair settlement that we all deserve. So for me, it is the right way to do it, because we know that we've got our green, amber and reds. There are green and ambers we're taking, there are ambers that we can't even achieve. There's definitely reds out there that none of us would want us to do. And if we wanted to take a different route, some of those reds would have to be done now. We'd have had a conversation last week around supporting people around care for children around the county. Well, if you want the reds to go, that's where the money's going to go from. So for me, we are going the right way, and it's up to all of us in this room to make sure that we get that challenge down to London, to government, and make sure that that settlement is fair in the future, because until we do that, We aren't going anywhere. So for me, it's got nothing to do with politics, about balancing the budget and make sure we get it right for next year with the government.
Well said, Matt. Okay, we've been proposed and seconded. Are we all happy to approve?
I did ask a question, Chair.
Oh, sorry, Alan. You have to remind me what it was. I thought it was a statement, not a question.
Well, I know you probably turned off because I was talking about something you didn't want to hear. But I did ask about how this change in the budget affects the proposals related to transfer of services or discussions about the transfer of local services.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that, Alan. And I think we've had a chat outside of this room about that, and it doesn't change our proposals. We are welcoming partnership with town and parish councils. Those that want to go forward, we are supporting them to continue, and therefore this budget as outlined makes no difference to the opportunity for town and parish councils to take on services where they want to do so, and they'll get all the support possible from Shropshire Council in order to do that.
Okay. Everybody happy?
I was just going to comment, Chairman, that I thought Alan for a moment had left the usual script at home and turned onto a different plane, but he couldn't resist it, of course, talking about the devastating cuts and the cynicism of the local elections. Well, we understand that, Alan. You have to do that because that's the nature of things. But I was just interested this week that when we listened to the economics of the 60s and 70s coming from Liverpool direction, and the need to borrow, what was it, 350 to 500 billion, and when tasked of where they were going to borrow this money from, the answer was the European Central Bank. I think we need to take no lessons from you, Alan, but I do ask you, because I love listening to you, but I do ask you, turn off the record, please. Let's have a different script. And as Malcolm said so many times, come and join us in trying to put the solutions together. And whilst Hannah's here, and I welcome you, Hannah, and the constructive questions that you asked, we said to Roger, come and help us, come and sit in, come and make a contribution. That's what we need. We want a united council, not one that's divided. And beyond the cynical May elections, we'll all have to stand there, those of us who are coming back, as Mal said so sort of neutrally in this matter. So please, let's have a change in the script.
I think we'd all sign up to that. All in favour? Thank you. It's the Michael Wood show today.
I'll just change my piece of paper, Chairman, if I may. Foster care payments, yes. And back again, yes. I never realised I was in this one was mine. So I have got a briefing. If you don't mind, I'll go through it. I'll try not to be verbatim, so I don't want to continue too long. But before I outline the changes in this positive report, I must acknowledge a significant and important contribution that foster carers play in providing caring and loving family environments for children who are looked after by Shropshire Council either on a short or a long-term basis. This is the annual review of our payments for foster carers, which local authorities are responsible for setting out their payment scheme for any changes to take place from April 1st each year. The review this year affects changes in two key areas, taking into account the recent judgments. The policy this year includes payments for family and friends, connected persons, to receive a payment. Note that this change in policy affects 45 approved connected person households and will create a budget pressure as set out in the report, paragraph 4.3. This is an unavoidable consequence, and it has the effect of leaving the department with £155,000 more to find. In addition to the payment structure now includes a skill payment, so it is dependent on the levels of skills that the foster parent achieves, and we obviously help with that situation. And of course that rewards those who have more challenging children. The scales are set out in the paper in more detail in the attached policy, which I trust you've all read. Shropshire Foster Care Association have been fully engaged and contributed to the development of the policy. I was going to make a couple of points, Chairman, before I don't think I've got them all in actually, that the proposed new policy supports a payment structure is available. Yes, it is moved recommendations 2.1A and B.
Thank you, Michael. Mark? That's second. Karen, you coming in?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak in support of this. This to me is just sort of levelling the playing field, so to speak, and it brings those family and friend carers into the same sort of area and in terms of training as our foster carers have already, that are already in place, because this means that anyone now receiving an allowance will have to undergo the same amount of training, as I say, and the ability to upskill themselves. I also want to pay tribute to the current foster carers that we have in the county. As in the previous administration, I sat on a foster carers panel, and I understand the rigorous process that they're put through in terms of screening and what we expect from them. And that can be seen played out by many of the children that have gone through foster care in Shropshire, and the outcomes and the lives that they now have as a result of those foster carers. So I'd just like to welcome this paper. It's a pragmatic approach in terms of assessing the possible risk that we could be by not adopting this approach, and also the payments being offered to those family and friends foster carers.
Thank you, Karen. Hannah?
Thank you, Chair. I just had a question really, because going through it's sort of reasonably clear, I think, what is going to happen in the future. Correct me if I'm wrong, but all foster carers will have both sets of allowances set out in the tables on page 40, is that correct? Both allowances will be paid to all? Yeah. So my question really was around, it seems fantastic that those who were not getting an allowance previously will now do so. That's brilliant. For those foster carers who are existing foster carers who are already paid, so not for their friends and family carers, will their allowances remain comparable with what they are at present? Thank you.
Sorry. Sorry, I'm waiting for the nod from next door to you, Hannah. I think the answer is yes. Yes?
Yes.
Yes, there you are. Thank you for that question.
Okay. Is everybody happy to approve the paper? So, yeah, thank you. Moving. Mal, refugees update.
Thank you, Chairman. I actually want to bring you up to date on the current position with the refugees in the county and what we see coming our way in the near future. But I think I should start by firstly saying a thank you to Ruth Houghton on my right, who's been the lead officer for Shropshire Council, in conjunction with other officers of Shropshire Council and also our partner organisations, for the work that they've done in making the refugees movement into Shropshire probably as easy as it could have been. Clearly there have been lessons learned, that we've got no less than 8 families now moved into Shropshire, which consists of 16 adults and 17 children, and to my understanding they're all settling in very well. The reason for the paper was that we did say originally that we take 10 families and up to 60 people in total, and from the figures I've just given you, we're a long way short of that. So I would like for the council to consider its position and make sure that we fulfil that 60 offer that we made by taking on 5 more families. I just quickly, Chair, if you bear with me, I just want to go through, because when I spoke to you before I sort of tried to explain the understanding of the refugee setup and asylum seekers and what they are and who the groups are. And in the past we've said to you there are 4, we now think there are 5, so if I quickly go through them. The first one is the refugees themselves that have come from the camps and have, I say, successfully come into Shropshire, and some of them have found voluntary work, the children have moved into the local schools, etc. is really going well. When I say I want to expand that, the asylum seekers was, there's indication that we could have had a large number of asylum seekers coming into Shropshire. Our meeting with the government, we stated that we didn't think that was appropriate this time in Shropshire for a number of reasons, and I believe they've accepted that because of the work that we've done with the refugees. The third section is the unaccompanied asylum seeker children, which are in Kent, which are around 2,000, and I'll touch on that a bit more in a minute. The fourth one is the number of unaccompanied asylum seeker children still in Europe. And the fifth one, which I'll bring to you, which is just to let you know that a number of children actually made their way directly to Shropshire by their own means. Only a small number, 5, but they're under the control of Shropshire Council. So the main ones, refugee ones, clearly you'll be well versed with that, and the settlement that comes with that funding is ring fenced, and I say it's going well. The one that's probably going to impress us more at the moment is going to be the unaccompanied asylum seeker children from Kent. And if you apply the form that's been given to us, we should get around, I've got the total figure there, is it 42 that should be with us. That includes the ones that are already with us. Again, there will be funding for that, and I seek today from the council any funding that comes forward be ring fenced, so it's totally for that. So for me, it's as good as it can be as a news story. I listened to the news this morning, and just to put it in perspective, 1,700 airstrikes over Aleppo in 8 days. I can't even comprehend what that would be like for those people underneath it. So for the number of people that we're taking, I'm saying 50, this is Shropshire just doing its little bit, but a very essential bit for those people that are here. So for me, I say it's a good report, and I do commend the staff for the work that they've done. On one little sour note, and I will raise it, I was unwell and wasn't able to attend full council last week, where I'm told it was raised as an issue about the refugees. If you have an issue with any of the refugees, any work that's being done, please speak to myself or officers before you raise it at full council. It's not the place to do it. So I hope you'll take that on board and take that message back, Anna, to your members, because it wasn't the right place and it wasn't the right facts either. So I'll park that there. So can I ask Cabinet if they would to support me on the recommendations that are on page 2, which is recommendations A to G.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you, Karen. Any speakers on that? Stuart?
Yeah, just briefly. Any of us that certainly have children and have seen the horrific bombings that have been going on, as you alluded to, Mal, surely this must be a very compassionate plea for Shropshire to take in as many people as we can afford to do so. Unfortunately, there have been, as I've heard, some very negative comments made about Shropshire taking in more of these, certainly the children and certainly the families. But from my point of view, this is a humanitarian, a massive humanitarian. Now, Mal and I have been involved in humanitarian work for some period of time through Shropshire Fire and Rescue Service. It goes far beyond that, far beyond this. And if you can imagine your own children being put under the pressures that are happening with the airstrikes there, surely there is no way that we can refuse these recommendations. Thank you.
Karen, the question.
I just wanted to add to the discussions that are taking place around the table, to add my thanks, because I've been part of the cross-party working group and have attended as and when I could over the last year. But also, this is, as I say, this has been a cross-party working group. We've had members of the opposite benches, parties who've contributed, and they will have seen for themselves the painstaking care that's been taken from day one to ensure that we absolutely get this right, because these people are coming from the most unimaginable and intolerable circumstances, and the last thing that we want to do is to bring them into an environment where they're further traumatised. And so I think that the resounding baseline, if you like, that we've come from is that we will cause no more harm, and that, I believe, has been achieved. There have been hiccups along the way, and hopefully we'll have learnt from those, and we will then be able not to repeat those mistakes as and when we receive and welcome more people into this fabulous county of Shropshire. So I'd like to also thank Mal for his chairing of that cross-party group as well, because it's been a job well done as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you, Karen. Hannah.
Thank you, Chair. I think perhaps just for clarification, our group, the Liberal Democrats, are fully supportive of Shropshire taking in refugees, and would probably be pushing nationally and locally for more, not less. we fully recognise the absolute trauma and horror that these families have been through, and the fact that there are unaccompanied children wandering around Syria, Europe, Britain is horrific. You wouldn't wish it on any of your own children or any child in the world. So we are absolutely fully supportive of this and welcome the proposed increase. And I also recognise that where there are teething problems, it's important to have that information, and it should be directed to the right channels. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Hannah. I think it is a very empathetic situation. Pauline, you registered, you'd like to speak on it, given the circumstance, I think.
As a member of the cross-party committee, I just want to emphasise the work that the officers have put in and the dedication. When it first started, I was a bit sceptical, and I thought, how are we going to be able to achieve what we were all hoping for? And really, I've just got to thank Ruth and her team and everybody on there. Their dedication is amazing, and we have achieved what we set out hope for, and I think we are above it. And must have it recorded. Our thanks to the officers and again to Mal for his chairing of the group.
So thank you, Pauline. I think that's something that everybody around the table would want to echo as well. Alan, final word?
Well, just to confirm from our perspective, and Kev Paul is on that group, and he's come back with reports about how well it's working and what great care and attention is given to the problem, and particularly remarking on Ruth's contribution to that. So congratulations all round. I do happen to believe, as Ruth Hannah makes the point, that probably we should be talking to the government as a sort of social conscience element, apart from health and well-being for the people throughout the world, about increasing the quota that Britain itself has adopted so far, and that's something that we might want to talk about as a policy issue at a forthcoming full council meeting.
Absolutely, I think we're all in agreement around the table that it is an excellent way forward, and any help we can give to the humanitarian crisis that is occurring in the world today, the Shropshire Council should put every resource we can to help out. So thank you everyone. Just take us to the vote. So all in agreement, I gather. Thank you. Item 10, Michael.
Very much a technical paper, Chairman. This is the constituent authorities of Herefordshire, Telford and Wrekin, Worcestershire, whom that incidentally met on Monday morning. This has been approved by all of the councils, and I just recommend the alterations to you, which I outlined on Appendix A.
Thank you, Michael. Sitting on that committee, I'm happy to second that. Any questions? No. All in favour? Sure. Thank you.
Me again.
Back to Michael.
A very good report actually on our health and safety performance for 15-16. Clearly historical, but nevertheless good progress made all round. The department, our H&S team, do splendid work, and they do have to do a bit of prodding occasionally, but this is a buying in of all members of the authority, not just the team, to achieve what they have done. They're extremely proactive throughout the premises and audit inspections, and they're also very proactive in going out to other organisations in offering the training. I think again we've got a nice little graph towards the rear of this, where we just show on chart 4, page 13, the benchmark of reportable injuries and how we sit well in our peer authorities. Incidentally, this particular benchmarking is done against those authorities seek to join with us in seeing how they're doing and how well we're doing. So it's not something where we can just simply say it's rural authorities or to the difference. I think if I was in Hull at the moment and sitting on their council and presenting this report, I'd have just a tad of difficulty. But Chairman, I do think it's a positive report. Our team are to be commended, and long may they continue to do so. As I say, and just to repeat, it is a matter of everybody buying into it. It's not just simply the team. I move the recommendations.
Thank you, Michael. Do we have a second for that? Second, Stuart. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Item 12. Exclusion of public and press. Proposed. Seconded. All in favour? Thank you.